So, Happiest Season is the story about coming home for Christmas and trying to conceal the fact that you're gay. So it tells the story of Abby and Harper. Abby is played by Kristen Stewart, and Harper's played by Mackenzie Davis. They're a couple. They're deeply in love with each other. And Harper invites Abby home to her family for Christmas. The only problem is that she hasn't told her family that she's in a relationship with a woman. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One is, of course, that she fears that she won't be accepted and be kicked out. The other reason is that her father is a political figure who has really based a lot of his campaign on family values, so she fears that she's really going to destroy her parents. So it's basically, she brings her home, but conceals the fact, says, Abby's my friend. Yeah, my girlfriend. She's my friend, and a girl, but she's not my girlfriend, whatever. And so basically she has to try to conceal it the whole time. And so it becomes this game of trying to, keep these secrets at bay, while still trying to enjoy Christmas, which is not going to happen. Since this is like a comedy mixed with drama, we know that by the third act, everything is going to come crashing down, and eventually, Abby and Harper are going to have to come clean with the whole thing. It's going to happen, mostly because for the majority of this film, it pretty much focuses on the simple kind of like domestic comedy that you would expect in a kind of like coming home for Christmas film. Like there's some slapstick antics, there's some there's some silly kids who pull some pranks throughout it. There's a competitive skating match, there's an altercation at a mall which leads to some silly stuff, and there's a little bit of like some melodramatic romance here, like when Harper comes home, she notices that her parents are trying to push her towards this guy that she's known, since she was a teenager, and she knows it's not quite gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. Harper's mother is played by Mary Steenburgen, and she's very pushy. She's all about the Christmas cheer, and kind of has this almost kind of like Pitch Perfect tone of that kind of like closed-minded mother, but she wants to keep being involved in everything. And I also got to mention there's the eldest sister of Harper, played by Alison Brie, who's kind of like jealous. She's like the black sheep of the family, surprisingly. Like she's been like shoved off to the side. Like her father only sees her as someone who can come to her house and fix the internet. So there's a lot of contention going on within the household, and eventually, something's gonna give, and it's and I almost expected it to happen with how like silly the film has been throughout, that it was going to end with a scene where like the Christmas tree topples over and someone gets hit with something in a slapstick manner. And sure enough, right on schedule, that happens in this film. I also got to mention too, like great supporting performance by Eugene Levy's son. I forgot, Dan Levy. Dan Levy's in this film. He does a great job as the supporting gay best friend. His role's kind of minor, but he gets in a lot of like the silly lines. Like when he comes over, like when he makes an emergency stop over to Harper's family to sort of like help out Abby with the situation, he plays it up so ridiculous that he's trying to put on the guys that he's straight. So like, I benched like 1,000. I'm really into women. I'm a total heterosexual. Like it's very silly. It's very kind of like cringeworthy. But this is all pretty much par for the course for like domestic Christmas family drama. And it gets pretty sentimental by the end. Like by the end of the film, like it almost kind of like turns into like almost like a wish fulfillment fantasy by the end of the film, because by the end there's a level of acceptance and love and warmth for the Christmas season that I know for like for a lot of people who are fearful about coming out as gay to their parents, it's going to seem like a huge fantasy that this is how the film ends. But you know what? After so many Christmas films where they've all been overly sentimental and all been overly sugarly and all have been pretty stupid and silly and slapsticky, I'm actually kind of fine that they want to take this route with with having like homosexuality added into the equation. Like, yeah, this film doesn't really touch on any like huge topics about homosexuality, or how much, even when it has that pitching of this political figure who's all been about like family values and making sure keeping the homosexual relationships at bay, doesn't really clash. Like by the end, like their politician father is basically like, oh, okay, whatever, it's my daughter, I love her, and that's great, and it's sentimental. It's a little hard to swallow, but you know what, there's a lot of stuff in this film that's hard to swallow. Like, that there are these like adopted kids who come into the equation. There's, like I said, there's silliness at the mall. There's like slapstick at the ice rink. All this ridiculous stuff that happens in the film. That, you know what, by the end, sure, why not? I mean, like, if we're looking at this film from just like if it's plausible, sure, a lot of this stuff isn't plausible. It gets very, very screwball by the third act. And you know what? I'm actually pretty much okay with that, because what matters in the end with this type of story is, how much you feel for the characters, how much you want them to succeed, and how funny it can be. And there are some pretty funny lines here and there. Like, Levy made me laugh like quite a few times, especially for his little subplot about trying to feed about trying to feed Abby's pets while they're away, but not doing a very good job of it. It's not like the biggest kind of laughs. It's just kind of like, that's kind of funny. That's kind of silly and goofy. Sure, why not? There's some slapstick antics here. There's people running around concealing secrets. There's a little bit of a twist in the third act where we reveal what's happening with another couple in the family who are ashamed to tell their parents about what their current marital situation is. But it's for what it is. It's not too bad. Like, it's funny in parts. Like it gets a little romantic here and there. Like some of the scenes where Abby and Harper are just by themselves and like making out. They actually do have some real good charisma here. That I think most of it works. That that by the end, sure, if it's gonna be like overly sugarly and sentimental and just take like a fairly easy route, you know what, fine. I've seen a lot of Christmas films that do that. I haven't seen a lot of Christmas films that add homosexuality to the equation. I've seen a few smaller ones that have risen up, but none with like such an accomplished cast here. Like Stewart and Davis are great in this. They have like pitch perfect chemistry. Levy made me laugh a lot. You have you have a lot of big names here. You have Aubrey Plaza, like I mentioned. Mary Steenburgen is really good. And just like the cast has great chemistry, and I think in order to make this kind of story work and not just seem like melodrama that's par for the course, they really have to bring in a good performance, and they just have to have great back and forth. And I think for the most part, they do. So yeah, this is a very silly, somewhat mindless holiday comedy, but you know what? For what it is, it kind of works, and I enjoyed most of it. It's super sentimental, and like I said, there's a bit of like a wish fulfillment here. But you know what? It's the kind of like acceptance and wish fulfillment that you hope for. It's what you want. It's great at what it sets out to be. So, for the happiest season, 3.5 out of 5 stars.